Hey guys, so today we're going to make chicken piccata, and so here's my recipe. Chicken piccata is a good entry-level chicken dish that you can learn to work with chicken, and also it kind of reviews pan sauces, which some of you need some review on that, and it's really good and it's really easy. So here's my recipe. If you notice, I have a green cutting board, and you're like, Chef, but this is chicken. Yes, it is chicken, but before we start prepping our chicken, you want to prep all your vegetables. And the reason that you do that in that order is because vegetables can sit out. Chicken, you don't want it to sit out. You want to go to the walk-in, get it, fabricate it, cook it, put it away. You don't want it to sit out at all. So this recipe, we're going to change a little bit. And normally, in class, when I make changes to recipe, I'll put it up on the board and you'll have a copy and we'll do it, but I'm just going to explain how we're going to do this. So first thing we need to do is make sure we have all of our non-chicken ingredients, and we're gonna meese those up. So 4 chicken breasts, we'll get those later. All-purpose flour for dredging, I have that right here. Kosher salt, olive oil, half a lemon with the rind cut. So half lemon with rind cut in thin rounds. So I'll show you how to do that in a second. Half cup dry white wine, such as Pinot Grigio. I do not like cooking with Pinot Grigio. I don't know why this recipe says that. So that's right here. 1 cup chicken broth. Now, if you notice, I have a lot of extra liquid, and because when you're doing a pan sauce, many times it needs adjusting. So you should follow the recipe initially, but always be prepared to adjust at the end. Half a lemon juiced. I have a whole lemon, just in case I need extra. And then 2 tablespoons of butter. Unfortunately, I forgot my butter from home, and we currently don't have any butter. So this is what we have on hand. We also have some flat leaf parsley and some capers, which I'll get out momentarily. So let's get started. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna cut our lemon down into rondelles, and we're gonna leave the rind on, and that's gonna add some nice flavor. And so all we're gonna do is use our 70s Kung Fu grip and make 1/8-inch slices. So these are rounds or rondelles. And this is one of the few times you'll probably ever use this knife cut. There we go, put that away. Now, if you ever wanted to make a garnish, you can take one of these rondelles and you cut about halfway through, just like this, and then you make a twist, and that makes a nice lemon twist. Or if you have 2 together, you can make a double lemon twist, and I'll show you that once you get back. So we'll put this aside. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut up some parsley. So I have my parsley right here, and I need 2 tablespoons, I believe. Let me check my recipe. Actually, yes, calls for 1/4 cup. So 1/4 cup is actually 4 tablespoons. So all I'm gonna do is so you have parsley like this, and this is flat leaf parsley, and you're just gonna pick the tops off the stems, and then this goes in your stock. So we'll put that aside, and meet me back here when I am done picking. So I am done picking my parsley, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to now mince it. So this is how I mince parsley, and I think it's really efficient, is I treat it like a chiffonade, and I just kind of like gently, I try not to bruise it, is just roll it on up into a ball. I use my bird beak technique, and then I'm just gonna go through it once. And then I stop periodically, and I just kind of roll it up behind and reset my bird beak, and I go through it. Now, I think I've said this to you guys before, is I like more of a rustic mince, which means that it's not like microscopic. Also, I don't like it mashed into the cutting board. If you notice, my minced parsley is still green. If it's becoming dark, if you're just mashing it in, it's gonna get really nasty. Your knife needs to keep moving forward. And so now that I've gone through once, I'm just gonna go through again. And you see, like, it happens, if you use my technique, it happens really, really quickly. And I try and push the bigger leaves to the front, so I do those first. And like I said, it's more of a rustic chop, which means that there's a little bit of bigger pieces in there. And I actually think the rustic chop looks a little bit nicer than the minced super fine. And the reason I think that is because a lot of people take the mince too far on parsley and then it just looks like garbage. So there we go. And that's basically it. That's all you have to do. And we need a 1/4 cup. So I'm just gonna scrape it all towards the center. I'm gonna fill my 1/4 cup, make sure I have enough, pack it down. It's like almost exactly the perfect amount. I have a little bit extra that I can put aside. And then on to the next thing. So if you notice that between mise en placing things, I am cleaning off my cutting board and starting fresh, because you don't want any parsley mixed in with the lemon or anything else. One thing that is not in this recipe, but I've always been meaning to put in, is garlic. Because in this kind of pan sauce recipe that is Italian, you almost always need garlic. So I have 2 cloves of garlic. I'm gonna just crush them. And this is the easiest way to peel them, as they don't want to peel. And then all I'm going to do now is I'm going to mince them. I'm going to go through them once, kind of like the parsley, using my bird beak. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to squish it with some salt. That's not a technical term. But essentially I'm going to use the salt as an abrasive to break down the garlic. So I'm going to take a nice healthy pinch of salt. I'm going to put it on top. And it might look like a lot of salt, but what I'm going to do is add less salt down the road to my dish. And then all I'm going to do is just rub it into the cutting board. And this is going to do a couple things. It's going to break down the garlic, and it's going to also release all of those oils. So it's going to make your dish actually taste better. There. Now I have a nice garlic paste. And then we'll just put that aside and move on. So now, as you see the yellow cutting board, we're going to move on to chicken, because we have all of our non-poultry mise completed. Now we need to get down to the chicken breasts, put those aside a second. So what we're going to do is, it's called scaloppini. Some people call it medallions, and there's 2 ways to do it. I'm going to show you both ways. I normally do the non-traditional method, but I will show you. So this is the traditional method of making chicken scaloppini, or, I mean, there's all kinds of scaloppini, veal scaloppini, you know. So this is a Ziploc bag, or Ziploc type bag, and all I'm going to do is, I cut the top off, is I'm going to open it up. And you don't want to use plastic wrap for this, because plastic wrap just breaks up way too easily. And so what we're going to do is cut and pound the chicken. And so now that I have my Ziploc bag ready, I am going to open up my chicken breasts. And then so you have a normal chicken breast. And you should get used to working with all kinds of different chicken breasts, because when you cut it off the bone, you might be really proud of what you did, but it might go into the freezer and then come out, and then you have someone else's, which might not be as pretty. So you have to be able to adapt what you do. Now this right here, that gets cut off. Right here where the breasts connect down to the ribs, we're gonna cut that off. Even if it's a little pink, that's okay, as long as it's not purple. Right here, there's a little bit of connective tissue right where the wing connects to the breast, so that we're gonna cut off, because when that cooked, that gets kind of hard and nasty. And now this all gets saved for stock, so please do not throw that away. And now we have the thick end, which is the front, and the thin end, which is closer to the back, and we're gonna make it lay flat. And now what you're gonna do is, this is, compared to the cutting board, your knife is 90 degrees. This is 0 degrees. We're gonna go halfway in between. This is 45. And so what you're gonna do is, about 2 to 3 inches, about the same length as a botnet, you're going to cut at a 45-degree angle, just like that. And then you're going to move 2 to 3 inches back. A little smaller this time because it's getting thicker. You're trying to make similar size pieces. There we go. So now this is what I refer to as medallions and what most other people refer to as medallions as well. Now, if someone says scaloppini to you, they probably mean pounded. And so what you're gonna do is, now chicken pounds really easily, so do not go overboard with this. You're gonna take your plastic that we already cut. You are going to start, sometimes you have like a small side and a big side with bigger spikes. Always start with the small side. Take your knife off. This is the worst table for doing this on because the table just bounces so much. And all that you're trying to do, I'm barely hitting it, is you're trying to get it even. Because if you look at this piece, it's really thin here and really thick here, and you want nice, even cooking. And you're also trying it not to get like splintered ends. So just nice and easy. And that's all that chicken scaloppini is. Okay? And so all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this with all the chicken. I'll see you back here in a couple minutes. So I have finished breaking down all 4 breasts and cutting them down into medallions and then pounding them out into scaloppini. And so what I'm going to do now is, before I flour them or move them, I'm going to season them. And just a light sprinkle. And if you notice how high my hand is, I don't know if you can tell compared. If I season like this, I'm just gonna get a pile of salt. So you really want it to be like super high. It makes it, you know, one chef is like, I want it to fall like snow. And I'm like, sure. Now this is, you could season the other side, but these things are so thin that you probably don't need to. And then we're going to flour. Some people season their flour. I don't like to do that because I think you waste a lot of seasoning and it goes into the garbage. This gets exactly how much seasoning we want. And then no waste. Flour's cheap, seasoning is not. Okay, let's move. So before we start cooking our chicken, we're going to do a quick review of rice pilaf. And you're gonna need this probably for Nagdi. It's on almost every year. And so it's, the basics are really easy. They might ask you to saute an onion first or something like that, but the cooking of the rice never changes, and that's what messes everybody up. So all that I have here is 1 cup of basmati rice. It could be any kind of rice. And then, because it's a 2-to-1 ratio, I have 2 cups of chicken stock. I'm going to throw some salt in there because this is not seasoned yet. And now the best way to tell if your rice is going to be seasoned properly when you are done is to just try the stock. Like, mix it around, make sure the salt is all dissolved. Just try a little bit. It tastes perfectly seasoned. And so now I'm gonna throw a little bit of butter in here. I'm gonna put a lid on it, and I'm going to bring it to a simmer. Now, because I've been cooking so long, I normally keep it on high. You can bring it up slower if you like. And then once it comes to a simmer, we're gonna put it in the oven. That's what pilaf means, rice cooked in an oven. But it makes it happen a lot quicker if you bring it to a simmer here and then stick it in the oven. So I'll see you in a couple minutes. So it's only been like 2 or 3 minutes. I got my mise en place all set up, and you can see that my pot is simmering. So I'm not going to stir it. I might just give it a little swirl to make sure everything is mixed up. And I'm gonna walk over and I'm gonna put it in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. I'm gonna start with 15 and then I'm gonna check it. So not only today are we going to make chicken piccata and you learn how to make medallions and scaloppini, but I'm also going to teach you how to batch cook. Many times at home what happens is you make like one batch and then you make your sauce and then you go on. Well, in a restaurant you're cooking lots at a time sometimes. And so this is called batch cooking, where you just keep like making more and more and more. And so I'm going to add our oil to the pan, and this is where the size of the pan matters. So it gave me a specific amount, but I'm gonna add enough oil to just cover the bottom and maybe a little bit extra. So this is turned up all the way. You can see I have a little bit more oil than you normally would have with sauteing, but because we were covering the chicken in flour, what's gonna happen is it's going to soak up a lot of that oil. Not that it's gonna become greasy, but it's going to become, it's just going to soak into the flour portion. And sometimes that's okay, as long as it doesn't become greasy. So all that I'm doing is putting my chicken in the flour, and this is called dredging. And then I'm going to put my hand here, and it feels hot, and I'm just going to stick a corner in. I don't hear anything, so I'm going to wait. If you put your chicken in the pan before the pan is ready, then that flour will soak up extra oil and then it will become greasy. So always test it, and you can always pull it back out. And you can see that little bit of flour right there. It's still not even, like, it's not bubbling, it's not sizzling. And at the moment, even though I have gloves on, I am practicing clean hand, dirty hand. I also have a set of tongs. And I also am like working in order from left to right. So I have my chicken, that's all the way over here, right off camera. I have my flour, then I have my pan, and then over here I have my, where the chicken is going when it is done. And you see it's a pretty big pan. I am using olive oil, and I see a little bit of smoke, so we're gonna try again. I'm gonna shake off the excess, because you don't want excess. And there we go. You can hear it just starting. And what you really want to do here is you want to get enough in the pan that they are comfortable, that the moisture can get away from the chicken without, it can get away from the chicken and make it brown nicely, but you don't want to overcrowd the pan or not have like two pieces in the pan. So there we go. This is what your pan should look like. If it's not full, add more. If it's more than this, take some out. And now we're getting a little high. I have it set to all the way up. I have a feeling I'm gonna wanna be around 10 or 12, so I'm gonna go down to 12. And while you do this, you need to look, hear, smell, use all of your senses to make sure that it's cooking properly. This is going to brown very quickly. And once it starts browning, then we're gonna flip it over and get it out, because I can almost guarantee this is so thin, by the time it's brown, it's done. But that does not mean that when chicken is brown, it's done. So I'm just gonna give it a little peek. Not brown yet, but it's making a nice crust. And this is the first time I'm actually sauteing on this new cooktop, so we'll see how it does. It's 12, sounds like it's doing pretty well. Now, when we make our sauce, what we're going to do is we are going to batch cook all the chicken first, and then at the very end make our sauce. It's not like you make, cook chicken, make a sauce, and start again. You do all the protein first. Okay, so I see a little bit of brown creeping around underneath, and so I'm going to flip this over. Just a little bit of GBD, golden brown. On this dish, you don't need a lot of brown on it. And all that I'm going to do is I'm just going to brown up the other side, and then I'm going to put it in this pan and I'm going to shingle it. So I'm just going to fan it out from the back to the front, and then I'm just going to go through all the chicken. So I'll see you in a minute when the second side is done. So at this point, the bottom is getting GBD. We're just gonna take it out. And this is where your pan can start getting a little too hot. So, and if you wanna know if it's done, all you need to do is take the thickest piece in the pan and just tear it like this. And if it looks fibrous, you see how it pulls like string cheese, it's done. And some people get scared because it's a little pink inside. Pink is fine as long as it's fibrous, as long as it pulls. Now you see all this right here? This is all the fond. And so what we're gonna do is I'm going to take all of the oil out of the pan because we don't want to add oil to our sauce. What we want is we want the brown. We want the fond and the flavor. So there, we're left with the fond. We're just going to take a little bit of our chicken stock. We're going to get all that beautiful fond up. And that actually cleans the pan. I'm gonna pour it back into my chicken stock because that's, I mean, really we're just fortifying and fortifying chicken stock and making it taste better and better and better. And then all that I'm going to do is wipe out the pan with a clean towel. Get a little bit more oil, and we're gonna start again until all the chicken is cooked. This is the final batch of chicken. This is the third batch. And so I am GBD on both sides. If you want to check to make sure that it's fibrous inside, you can. You can see how I'm shingling or laying out or fanning out, however you want to say it, my chicken in the pan. And this is very buffet style how I'm laying it out right now. So if you're gonna do a buffet, you can lay it out this way. And look how much chicken I got out of 4 breasts. It's amazing. This would probably feed 5 or 6 people easily. I'm not gonna take all the oil out. I'm just gonna pour just a little bit, about half of it out, because I actually need some of that oil still in the pan. So at the moment, I have a little bit of oil. I have the fond there. And what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna do 2 things. I am going to add some garlic, which is not in the recipe, but I think it's very necessary for this recipe. And then I'm going to add some of my lemon wheels. And we're just gonna brown those up a little bit, and we're gonna extract some of that flavor. Whenever you cook with garlic, you don't want the pan to be super hot because it can burn really easily. If you make a paste out of it, it works a little bit better. So right here where the oil is really heavy, I'm just gonna break up my garlic a little bit. Now when your garlic starts to brown, you need to act quick. This is when you need to add something to the pan that will stop the garlic cooking process so you don't burn it. Because as soon as you smell it, as soon as it starts to turn brown, which it already is, it's on the verge of becoming overcooked. And we'll take a look at our lemons, which are starting to look really good. So they're gonna pick up some of that fond to get some color. We don't want them to get too cooked. So if you notice right now, those little bits are getting brown. I'm gonna pull my pan away from the heat, especially if it's fire. I'm gonna add my wine. That's gonna stop the browning process. I'm gonna crank my heat. I'm gonna lift all that beautiful fond off of the bottom of the pan, and I'm gonna let that wine reduce a little bit. The wine is gonna reduce, it's gonna pull some of the acidity and flavor out of the lemons. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is we are gonna add our lemon juice, our broth, and remember I have too much broth, but I'm gonna I have a little extra in case I need it. And we're gonna add our capers. Now these capers have already been washed and soaked in water for a little while because they can be very salty because they're brined. I'm gonna add my capers. I'm going to bring that up to a simmer. And this essentially is our pan sauce. Now it is really, really thin, so I am going to teach you a new way to thicken a sauce. And this is called a beurre Meunier. And we're gonna make beurre Meunier in class, that we're gonna have it at the ready, but this is the old school way to do it. So unfortunately, I only have pads of butter. So we have some butter and we have some flour. This is our flour that we use to dredge our chicken. And all that I'm doing is working it in. And I should have done it with my other hand because I really like to stir with my right hand, but that's okay. So I'm already at a simmer. These burners are great for that. And then all that I'm gonna do is take a little bit of this beurre Meunier, and I'm just gonna add a couple little chunks here and there, and I'm just gonna stir. And you really wanna make sure that you stir this in. And you can see it starting to break apart, but what's gonna happen is it's going to also thicken it. And we are not looking for a super thick sauce. All that we're looking for is a little bit of body. And when chefs say that, a little bit of body, they mean just enough to like coat the spoon. Here, let me switch. There we go, took off the glove. And so once your sauce comes to a simmer, it's pretty much done thickening. So we're just gonna add a little bit more. And that's looking really good. And if you want to test it to see how thick it's becoming. So this looks really nice. And there's little bits of chicken in there too, and that's okay. So now I'm going to shut this thing off and I'm going to test it for seasoning. And now we have two ways to adjust. We can add more lemon juice to make it more acidic, or we can add more stock to make it less acidic. I'm gonna add just a little bit of stock, just because the lemon juice, I mean, you want it to be kind of a punch, but you don't want to knock somebody out. Also remember that this is gonna thicken up a little bit in the pan as you use it. This is pretty beautiful. I don't taste any chalkiness from the flour, and that's important. And then all I'm going to do is pour this on top. I'm gonna spin it around a little bit, since I can't spin my camera. And there you go, chicken piccata. I'll also show you a way to plate it. I almost forgot. I have to add the parsley, and I had it wrapped up and I didn't see it. So the reason that you add herbs at the very, very end, and this is okay that I'm adding it now, is because these are going to overcook really quickly. So if you read in the recipe, it actually says, season with salt and pepper and garnish with chopped parsley right before service. So you just put a little bit on top. The parsley is gonna add a nice flavor. And after 5 minutes, you're gonna notice that this parsley is actually going to go from beautiful, bright Kelly green to more of a olive green like our capers. But you see how the dish kind of pops now? Okay, let me grab a plate. Our rice after 15 minutes came out of the oven. And so, as you see, there's no liquid. And before you start stirring, never stir rice. What you're gonna do is you're going to tip it. And if you notice, there's no liquid coming out from the bottom. That means it's done. What you're gonna do is you're gonna put it in the Alto Sham or the hot holder cabinet. And then when you're ready to use it, you grab a fork, and they call it fluffing the rice. And this kind of just like makes the kernels separate without breaking them up. And there, that's as far as you wanna go. Now, when it comes to plate up, like the home style would be just to put like a mound on the plate and, you know, go from there. But most restaurants use a thing called timbales. And timbales are things that you pack like rice and stuff in, and then you put it on the plate. to make it look pretty, create height, stuff like that. And so this is your first lesson. Unfortunately, I cannot find any of our timbals or ramekins or anything, so I have these, which look like they're approximately the right shape. I'm gonna go with this one, even though it might be a little too much. I'm just gonna take it, I'm gonna put it inside. And if you notice, like, I'm just kind of spooning it in. And then when I get to the top, this is where I start just, you don't want to pack it too hard because you don't want it to be dense. I'm just gonna press it enough that it kind of holds its form. And now that it's kind of leveled off, I'm gonna take the plate, I'm gonna decide where I want it. If this is the center line, I want it just far back from the center line. And you could also put it in the corner. I'm gonna flip it over. And at this point, before you take it off, you can kind of like maneuver it wherever you want. I could push it in a corner, I could do whatever. A very classic way to plate is the 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I kind of like the 12 o'clock, the middle of the clock, the 6 o'clock. So we're just gonna leave it just off center. And you can see how much height it has created. Let me get this out of the way. I'm gonna take a couple pieces of chicken, and you always plate the protein towards the customer, and you kind of lean it up. And actually, if there's a big end and a little end, put the little end up because it will be more stable. This is a little too high, so it's kind of falling down on me. If I could find my timbals, it would be a lot better. So we got like 3 pieces, and then you would take some of these capers and sauce. You don't want to drown the plate. You just add a little bit towards the front. Notice how I'm not saucing up here, I'm just saucing towards the front. And you always present the customer with the protein, because I mean, they didn't come in and say, let me order some rice and see what that comes with. They're like, they wanted the chicken. That's why they're here. And then the vegetables would be around back. And you could do starch, veg, and then protein as well. That also. And then you could also just give it a little bit more love. And that's it. That's your first step into plating. See you in class.